What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 5 best builds in Path of Exile 2. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the leveling and mid game. And then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what charm should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. If you are looking for any of these builds on the website, then click my link in this video description or the pinned comment. This setup is super fun and has insane amount of lightning damage. Also, as you can see, it is one of the most visually impressive builds in the game, as the sorceress can paralyze and destroy monsters with a barrage of lightning. Our build has insane amount of AoV and great speed farming potential, by shredding through the maps and all the other endgame content with ease. All of these 3 skills, so the Archmage, the Lightning Incandescent and the Spark skills, together make up the bulk of our insane damage. At some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the sorceress has many tools to address this problem, and with optimized gear we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or gear to completely solve this issue. So if you want to fill out your entire screen with sparks of lightning and speed clear through the hundreds of enemies in few seconds, then let's get right into it. So with all of this said, let me show you the build. For the main class we have chosen the sorceress and our ascendancy is the Stormweaver. And for our first skill we have the Spark, and we are going with the support gems such as the Pierce, Arcane Tempo, Acceleration, Persistence and Wild Shards. Then second we got the Lightning Incandescent with the Controlled Destruction, Elemental Focus, Considered Casting, Lightning Mastery and Execute. Then next we got the Orbs of Storm with Lightning Exposure, Strip Away, Conduction, Fount of Mana and Magnified Effect. Then next we have a Mana Tempest with Inspiration, Premeditation and Murderous Intent. Then next we have Conductivity with gems like the Hex Bloom and the Heightened Curse and Focus Curse. Then next we have the Enfeeble with the Curse Ground and Expands. Then next we have the Voltaic Mark with no gems. Then next we have the Archmage with also no gems selected. And finally for the last one we got the Mana Remnants with Clarity, Vitality and Cannibalism. Most of this build is structured around using the Archmage, Sparks and the Lightning Incandescent, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their damage, while the rest are powerful filler skills that we can use until our main rotation comes back up, which happens rarely as we can basically spam it 24/7. Next, let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we need to use up until we unlock the Archmage skill. So first off, we are using the Ember Fusillade with Controlled Destruction and Ignition. Then next we have the Spark with the Conduction and Pierce. Then next we also got the Orbs of Storm with Lightning Exposure and Strip Away. And then finally we are using the Frost Bomb with Clarity and Vitality. This is your basic setup up until you get our build's one of the most important skills. Next up we have our passive skill tree. In very simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more for completing certain quests. We have 3 node tabs, so small nodes, notable nodes and keystones. All of them act as checkpoints that you want to reach, and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the spell damage node and make our way like this, until we get the raw power and the Path of Storms. Then now we make our way all the way up here, and get this overexposure. Then from here we can circle back a little, and get the Arcane Blossom and then these 2 more nodes. Then now we make our way all the way up here until the top, then take the right like this, and get these 2 nodes called the Power Conduction and the Pure Power. And now from here we can make our way all the way to the right side, and on our way we can pick up all of these nodes in no particular order. As soon as you unlock the Constant Gale Ascension, which gives us the Arcane Surge, then now we can invest our points into the left side, but until that point just get everything on the right. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascension setup this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Constant Gale, then the Force of Will, then next up get the Strike twice, and then finally get the Scourging Winds node. To simplify my decision making so you could easier understand, then we wanted to prioritize the raw power, Path of Storms, Arcane Blossom and the Overexposure, as this will give us the biggest build upgrades to not only damage but mana as well, so we wanted to get them first. And then for the rest we invested into more mana regen, more skill effect duration, and just more damage, which will make our character extremely powerful. As most importantly, because of the Archmage skill, the more mana we have, the more insane damage we can do. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the attuned wand. And you don't have to, but if you can, then get some of these bonus stats like increased spell damage and lightning damage to attacks. Also, extra mana stat could be helpful as well. Then for the helmet we have the coral circlet with energy shield, and for the bonus stats get the maximum life, fire resistance and cold resistance. Then for the chest we have the bone raiment with energy shield, percentage increase to max energy shield and the fire and cold resistance. Then for the belt we have the ornate belt with reduced charm charges, maximum energy shield and fire or cold resistance. Then for the gloves we got the jeweled gloves with energy shield, and for the bonus stats get the maximum life, maximum energy shield and fire or cold resistance. Then for boots we are using the feathered sandals with energy shield, and for the bonus, at this time you 100% only want this, and it is as high movement speed as possible. Then for our first ring we got the ruby ring with fire resistance, and for the extras we want any other type of resistances like the lightning and etc. While on the second one we got the sapphire ring with cold resistance, and for the extras again we want more resistances of any type or the maximum energy shield. And then finally for the amulet we got the azure amulet with increased mana regeneration, and for the extras we have maximum energy shield. As the game just launched, so this is the starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Your weapon is the most important upgrade, so prioritize any type of flat damage or increased attack speed. Specifically, the lightning damage roll will be the most important one, as your skills themselves do a lot of conversion. And then for defenses, make sure that you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so prioritize energy shield, maximum life, and any type of resistance that you can. Also, movement speed on boots is a good option as well. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. We want to start our main rotation by first off activating the Archmage, which while active will give our non-channeling spells cost additional mana, but now in return we will deal extra lightning damage based on our DPS and our maximum mana. And then from here we can simply spam the spark and the orb of storm, and this will fill our entire screen with the lightning that will destroy enemies in seconds. As you can see, this rotation is pretty straightforward. All you need to do is basically keep spamming the main rotation, and then use the rest of the filler skills for bosses or depending on the specific situation. If you ever run into the mana problem, then remember all the ways that I previously said on how we can increase it, and then also we can use the Mana Tempest and Mana Remnants to recover it even faster. And this might sound obvious, especially at the beginning when you might not have unlocked the Archmage skill. But if you run out of mana, then just simply cast less skills and wait. You will be doing very high damage anyways, so casting fewer skills won't really impact the gameplay that much, but it may reduce your mana consumption, especially if you're under-geared or under-leveled. This setup is known as the Toxic Poison build, as we are going to be dealing insane amount of damage with just the poison effects alone. Our playstyle is structured around specializing in dealing damage almost exclusively by spamming the gas and divine arrow, as because of our skill tree and the gear we are going to be deleting trash enemies in split seconds. However, what I really like about this build is the fast speed farming potential, as you can keep moving while dealing a lot of damage over time. And then for the rares and bosses, we will use the Plague Barrier and the Toxic Growth, which will annihilate anyone that stands in our way. If you want to stack as high poison as possible and use one of the highest DPS builds currently in the game, then let's get right into it. So with all of this said, let me show you the build. And for the main class we have chosen to go with the Ranger, and our ascendancy is the Pathfinder. Then for the first skill we have the Gas Arrow with support gems such as the Armor Explosion, Corrosion and Persistence. Then second we got the Toxic Growth with Martial Tempo, Soul Thief and the Concentrated Effect. Then next we got Divine Arrow with Bursting Plague, Comorbidity and the Long Shot. Then next we have the Rain of Arrows with Withering Touch, Maim and the Envenom. Next we are also using the Plague Barrier with Expanse, Magnified Effect and the Chaos Mastery. And then finally for the last one we got the Wind Dancer with Clarity, Cannibalism and Precision. And by the way, as you can see from the gameplay, I don't have all the skills equipped on my skill bar. It is because this build only requires 2 to 3 skills to function at all times, so really there's just no need for more. Most of this setup is structured around using the gas and divine arrows, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their poison area and damage, while the rest are powerful filler and utility skills that we can use until our main rotation comes back up, which happens rarely as we can basically spam it 24/7. Next, let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we need to use up until we unlock most of our poison skills, and when we have invested decent enough points into the poison damage. So first off, we have the rain of arrows with the maim and envenom. Then next we have the barrage with the armor explosion and corrosion. Then next we also got divine arrow with the bursting plague and the long shot. And then finally we're using the freezing salvo with only the venom support gem. Next up we have our passive skill tree. For most new players this can seem extremely daunting, so let me quickly explain. In very simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more for completing certain quests. We have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes and keystones. All of them act as checkpoints that you want to reach and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this evasion node. Then go like this and unlock all of these 3 nodes, so blur, eagle eye and the honed instincts. Then now keep going down here and then take the right and unlock this harness the elements. This will make that never poison effects can pop by themselves and do big damage. So then from here we want to keep on stacking the evasion and poison duration and damage. So then we go back to the previous path and keep going down, while on our way getting most of this circle and both of these 2 nodes called the escape velocity and the freedom of movement. And now finally from here we want to keep on going forwards and get these 2 last nodes. And then from here, the priority doesn't really matter that much, as you should be already doing huge amount of poison damage. So from here, unlock all the other nodes in whatever order you want. Also, in the future, I'm thinking to maybe invest some points into the acrobatics keystone, which will give me insane amount of evasion, but I still need to test this theory, so I'll let you know if I make an updated video. And then now, let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our ascension setup, this is what we have. So at the beginning, you want to unlock the contagious contamination. Then next, get the overwhelming toxicity. Then now get the running assault, and then finally the relentless pursuit. If we compare both of the Path of Exile games, then POE 2 is much slower, so getting this movement speed in the endgame will make this build even more powerful than it is right now. And to simplify my decision making and so you could easier understand, then we wanted to prioritize the blur, honed instincts, heavy ammunition and the crippling toxins, as they will give us the biggest poison upgrades to not only damage but duration as well, so we wanted to get them first. And then for the rest we invested into more stacking evasion, more skill effect duration and just more damage, which will make our poison last forever. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the expert short bow with a crit chance, and for the extra stats that we want to try to get are increased physical damage, increased accuracy and increased attack speed. And also, as the bow is a one-handed weapon, so we wanted to get the fire quiver, with the addition that adds 3 to 5 more damage to attacks, and for extra stats we want to get things like the physical damage, increased damage with the bow skills, and increased attack speed. Then for the helmet we have the advanced guarded helm with armor and evasion. For extras we want to get more evasion, more maximum life and reduced attribute requirements. Then for chest we have the expert pathfinder coat with evasion, and for bonus stats get reduced slow on debuffs, evasion rating, max life and percentage to lightning resistance. Then for the belt we have the fine belt with maximum life and lightning resistance. Then for the gloves we got the advanced section braces with evasion, and for bonus stats get accuracy, max life and fire and cold resistance. Then for boots we're using the expert laced boots with evasion, and for extras we want to get increased movement speed, even more evasion and resistances like cold and fire. Then for first ring we got the emerald ring with a lot of accuracy and cold resistance, while on the second one we got the sapphire ring with cold resistance, maximum life and more to all attributes. And then finally for the amulet we got the gold amulet with increased rarity to items found, and for bonuses get max life, more to spirit and more to all attributes. As the game just launched, so this is a starter setup which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Your weapon will be the most important upgrade, so prioritize any type of flat damage or increased attack speed. And then for defenses, make sure that you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so prioritize evasion, maximum life and any type of resistance that you can. Also, movement speed on boots is a good option as well. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And this is actually very straightforward. So for trash and weak enemies, just use the gas and vine arrow. And this will fire toxic arrows on the ground, which will all do poison damage over time. And then even detonate, which will cause you to deal even more damage. Then second, for bosses, rare enemies or just hard packs, this time we want to spam the toxic growth into a single gas cloud. And use plague barrier as needed or just to detonate the toxic growth. This rotation again will shoot toxins on the ground that explode and deal poison damage, but you don't have to wait for that delay by using the plague barrier. And you need to do all of this into a single gas cloud, which you can create by using the gas arrow and increase your damage even more. And then finally, the rain of arrows and the wind dancer are just meant for utility, so use them depending on the fight. This setup is a big AoE build which focuses on armor breaking offensively, and then the block defensively. Our main playstyle will revolve around using the Stampede skill, which will charge our character forwards and create patches of jagged ground, which then are exploded when the final slam portion of the ability is executed. By us using the Ancestral Warrior Totem skill with the Jagged Ground support gem, this will create now 2 patches of the jagged ground per each use, and will also be exploded by the Stampede. So we will be able to basically one-shot huge amount of grouped up enemies. Then also for leveling and mid-game, we are going to be using a 2-handed mace and taking the anvil's weight and the imploding impacts for the first 2 ascensions. While then later, when we have enough strength, we will invest into the Giant's Blood Keystone, which will unlock the ability for us to use a 2-handed weapon in just one hand, so then we can use a shield on our rough hand. So with all of this said, let me show you the build. For main class, we have chosen the Warrior, and our ascendancy is the Warbringer. And then for our basic skill, we got the Mage Strike with support gems such as the Rage, Close Combat and Maim. Then second, we got our most important skill, the Stampede, with support gems like the Momentum, Fist of War, Brutality and Stomping Ground. Then next we got the Leap Slam with Martial Tempo, Holy Descent and Culling Strike. Then next we have the Ancestral Warrior Totem with the Rolling Slam, Jagged Ground, Ancestral Urgency and Heavy Swing. Next we have the Scavenge Planting with the Vitality and the Cannibalism. Then next we have the Hammer of the Gods with the Second Wind, Hourglass, Execute and the Concentrated Effect. Then next we got the Seismic Cry with just one support gem, the Premeditation. And finally for the last one we got Attrition with no gems. Most of our build is structured around using the Stampede and the Ancestral Warrior Totem, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their damage, while the rest are powerful filler skills that we can use until our main rotation comes back up, but which happens rarely as we can basically spam it 24/7. Next, let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we need to use up until we unlock the Stampede and the Ancestral Warrior Totem skills. So first off, we have the Earthquake skill with support gems like the Lassacrate and the Fist of War. Then next we got the Shockwave with the Overabundance and the Bloodlust. Then next we also got Mage Strike with just the Rage gem. And finally we are using the Rolling Slam with the Martial Tempo. Next we have our passive skill tree. For most new players this can seem extremely daunting, but actually it's quite simple. In extremely simple terms, every character is granted 1 passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more from completing certain quests. In general, we have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes and the keystones. All of them will act as checkpoints that you want to reach and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the melee damage node and make our path like this until the brutal node. Then next we take smash and make our way to the singular purpose like this. Then now we go back and take Relentless for early game recovery. And then from here we again go back to previously where we left off and keep going forwards and then take the right path until we get to the Resolute technique. Then now we go back where our paths split and then we take the right side and make our way all the way to the Hail Heart. Also, while we are doing this, on our way we can grab the Spike Pit. And then from here, after you get your first ascension into the Anvil's Weight, then now you can begin filling out all the other armor break nodes and all the other nodes that you can see in this tree. And from here there's no specific priority that you should follow. And then finally, let's go back all the way to the middle again, and for our ascension setup this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Anvil's Weight. then get Imploding Impacts, then now get the Renlee's Training, and then for the last one take the Turtle Charm. To simplify my decision making and so you could easier understand, then we wanted to prioritize the Brutal, Smash and the Singular Purpose nodes, as this will give us the biggest build upgrade, so we wanted to get them first. And then for the rest, we wanted to invest into more recovery, more defense, and just more damage, which will make our character extremely powerful. In PoE 2, earning skill points take a lot of hard work, so it will be wise not to spend your skill points recklessly. You can of course refine your passive points later, but only at a cost, so following a specific setup is extremely useful. If you're following the setup, then make sure not to deviate from it, as some of my decisions that I make might not make sense at first, but is going to definitely pay off later. So please use the exact same path as I have right here, and don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make it easier to follow the path. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Expert Forge Maul with the critical and speed. And this is not required, but you can also, if you want, get the extra stats like the added flat physical damage, increased percentage to the physical damage and increased attack speed. Then for the helmet we have the Advanced Elite Great Helm with armor, and for the extra stats we want to get the max life, max strength and cold resistance. Then for chest we have the Abyssal Cuirass with the armor, and for the extra stats we want to get max life, more strength and fire resistance. Then for the belt we have the Fine Belt with the flash gain or 0.2 charges per second. And for the extra stats we want to get the max life, more strength and cold resistance. Then for gloves we got the Advanced Tempered Mitts with armor, and for the extra stats we want to get the max life, more armor, more to all attributes and cold resistance. Then for boots we are using the Expert Stone Greaves with armor, and for extra stats we want to get the max life, increased movement speed and the lightning resistance. Then for our first ring we got the Ruby Ring with the fire resistance, and for extra stats we want to get the max life, more strength or just more resistances to all elements. While on the second one we got the Sapphire Ring with cold resistance, and the extra stats are max life, more to all attributes and more percentage to all elemental resistances. And then finally for the amulet we got the Ember Amulet with more strength, more max life and fire resistance. As the game just launched, so this is the starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. But remember that your weapon will be the most important upgrade, so prioritize flat added physical damage, percentage increased physical damage, and percentage increase to attack speed. Specifically, the physical damage roll will be the most important one, as your skills themselves do a lot of conversion. And then for defenses, make sure you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so prioritize pure armor base types, and look for a combination of modifiers for life, resistances and strength. Also, movement speed on boots is a good option as well. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So, we want to start our main rotation by using the Stampede, which will create patches of the jagged ground, which are exploded when the final slam portion of the ability is executed. Then after that we use the Ancestral Warrior Totem, which will create now 2 jagged grounds. And then finally we use the Rolling Slam, which will also explode the Stampede and do massive amounts of AoE damage. Then from here we can use the Leap Slam to reposition and get great recovery because of the Holy Descendant support gem. Then the Hammer of the Gods skill is our finisher for tankier targets, so use it when the boss is at or below 35% HP, so we could benefit from the Execute support gem. And by the way, if you don't have enough spirit to maintain the Scavenge Planting and the Attrition, then feel free to use the Scavenge Planting during the general gameplay and deactivate it to then activate the Attrition for only against bosses. As you can see, this rotation is pretty straightforward. All you need to do is basically keep spamming the main rotation and use the rest of the filler skills for bosses or depending on the specific fight. This setup is very unique because we are going to be utilizing the Tempest Fury for the huge speed and distance buffs, so then we could proc the cast when shocked and summon hundreds of lightning balls to shock the enemies around. It also utilizes the cast on critical to occasionally spawn the Orb of Storm to increase our CC and DPS potential even more. If you're looking for a fun monk starter build with leveling and mid-game setups, then here they are. So let's move over to the build. For our main class we have the monk, and our ascendancy is the invoker. Because of our weapon, our basic skill is the quarterstaff strike. Then second we got the Tempest Fury with support gems such as Conduction, Martial Tempo, Crescendo, Soul Thief and Life Thief. Then next we got Cast on Shock with support gems like the Ball Lightning, Lightning Mastery, Wild Shards, Impetus and Scatter Shot. Next we have Cast on Critical with the Orb of Storms, Overabundance, Magnified Effect, Spell Echo and Lightning Exposure. Next we have Ghost Dance with support gems such as Clarity, Vitality and Precision. Then for the next two we got the Tempest Bell and Vaulting Impact. And for them we don't want to use any gems. Next we have the Killing Palm and we only get the Behead gem. Then next we have the Enfeeble and we use the Heightened Curse. And finally for our last one we got the Temporal Chains with no support gems. Overall you want to add the Ghost Dance only after you get enough spirits from the Lead Me through the Ascendancy node. Most of this build is structured around using the Tempest Fury and Cast on Critical, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their damage, while the rest are powerful filler skills that we can use until our main rotation comes back up. Next, let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we can use up until about level 25. So first off we have the Tempest Fury with the Martial Tempo and Crescendo. Then next we have the Storm Wave with the Concentrated Effect. And then finally we have our Orb of Storms with Overabundance and Controlled Destruction. This is your basic setup up until you get more spirits and points to spend. So for leveling, just keep using the Tempest Fury with the Storm Wave and the Orb of Storms for big single and AoE damage. Also, once you get a good quarterstaff that has some combination of flat physical damage, increased physical damage and or flat lightning damage, then you should probably start going into the mid-game build. And on top of all of this, don't forget to use the Tempest Bell skill, as it plays a huge role, so spam it whenever you can. Next up we have our passive skill tree. For most new players, this can seem extremely daunting, but actually it's quite simple. In very simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and sometimes are even granted more for completing certain quests. In general we have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes and keystones. All of them act as checkpoints that you want to reach, and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at the Evasion and Energy Shield, and go to the right side like this. Then now come back here and get both these nodes, so the Essence of the Storm and the Crashing Wave. Then next we continue the path like this, get the Momentum of the Truth on our way, and continue making our way up until the top and taking all of these nodes in our way as well. Then next up we take the right side and get all of these 3 nodes. And then finally from here, we make our way all the way to the left side and get these nodes in whatever order you prefer. And then last but not least, we come back all the way to the middle and here's our Ascendancy points. And this is how it should look like. So first we want to get this under my enemies, then the Soul Spring Eternal, then Lead to me through the Grace, and finally Protect me from harm. To simplify my decision making in the main tree, then basically we wanted to prioritize the 10-fold attacks and Killer Instinct nodes, as this will give us the biggest build upgrade, so we wanted to get them first. On top of this, the small attack nodes, so the 10% ones, are good as well in early game, so we get them as well. In general, in POE 2, earning skill points take a lot of hard work, so it will be wise not to spend your points recklessly. You can refund your passive points later, but only at a cost, so following a specific setup is extremely useful. If you are following my setup, then make sure to not deviate from it, as some of my decisions that I make might not make sense at first, but is going to pay off later. So please use the exact same path as I have right here. And don't forget that you can check this video's description to find a link for this website, and this should help you to make it easier for you to follow the path. Then next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Advanced Crackling Quarterstaff with critical, speed and of course the min and max damage. This is not required, but in the best case scenario we could get at least one prefix with the lightning damage. Then for the helmet we have the Advanced Brim Helm with armor and evasion, and if possible then get maximum life prefix. Then for the chest we have the Advanced Anchorite Garb with evasion and energy shield, and if possible then get more evasion or maximum life. Then for belt we have the Fine Belt with maximum mana. Then for gloves we got the Adorned Gloves with energy shield, and if possible then also get maximum life. Then for boots we are using the Advanced Frayed Shoes with evasion and energy shield, and if you can then get maximum mana increase. Then for our first ring we got the Ruby Ring with the fire resistance and or maximum life. while on the second one we got the Sapphire Ring with cold resistance and evasion rating. And then finally for the amulet we got the Azure Amulet with increased mana regen and evasion. As the game just launched, so this is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Your weapon will be the most important upgrade, so prioritize flat damage of any type. Specifically, the lightning damage roll will be the most important one, as your skills themselves can do a lot of conversion as well. And then for defenses, make sure that you're regularly updating the base type of your gear. So look for increased mana, life and any type of resistances, to try to get them at least to 75% cap. Some evasion is also important to roll, especially on the body armor. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So for bossing or large rare enemies, we want to start this rotation by engaging with the Vaulting Impact, and then hit enemies with the Tempest Fury. This combo will utilize a huge attack distance and fill our screen with the lightning bolts that do big damage. And then from here, if the enemies are not dead, then we can follow it up with the Enfeeble and then the Tempest Bell. As I mentioned previously, our Tempest Bell will play a huge role on our DPS, so spam it as much as possible. And then as far as all the other skills go, they are just filler spells, so just use them until you get the main rotation back up. This setup is very unique because we are going to be freezing enemies with the permafrost bolts, which will give us frost fires, so then we will be able to drop explosive grenades that can detonate, and with the explosive shots we will do massive amounts of damage. This build is great against bosses and other large enemy groups, as we can CC the enemy while our fuse is going on, and then we can detonate our AoE skills and clear anything and everything in our way. So let's move over to the build. When you get to it, you want to pick the Witch Hunter Ascendancy, but if you're leveling, then the basic mercenary class will work as well. And first we have our skills. So for the main spell we have the crossbow shot with no support gems. Then second we got the permafrost bolts with support gems like the glaciation, then the ice bite and also the deep freeze. We chose this skill because we want to push hard into the freezing effect. So then once we freeze our enemies, we can then drop a huge ignite on them with explosive grenade and do a huge amount of DPS. Then next we got the explosive grenade with support gems like the Frostfire, Concentrated Effect, Primal Arraignment, Eternal Flame and Searing Flame. This skill just got a huge buff in 80% physical to fire damage converter, so this will give us big ignites on the bosses and provide our build with fast clearing speed. Next we have Explosive Shot with support gems like the Wildfire and the Nimble Reload. Then next we have the Herald of the Ash with support gems such as the Clarity, Vitality and Precision. Then for Flash Grenade we got one support gem called Brutality. Then for high velocity rounds we have the Scattered Shot and Double Barrel. And then finally for our Galvanic Shards we got support gems like the Lightning Infusion and Pierce. As most of our build is made around the permafrost bolts and grenades, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their damage, while the rest of our powerful filler skills we can use until our main rotation comes back up. Next, let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we can use up until about level 25. So first off we have the high velocity rounds with double barrel and the scattered shot. Then next we have the flash grenade with the second wind. Then third we got the galvanic shards with the pierced and lightning infusion. And then finally we have the Ripfire Ballista with brutality and lockdown. This is your basic setup up until you get explosive shot, which happens from about level 22 or 25. While leveling, we will be using the high velocity rounds and flash grenade for single target, and then the Galvic shards with the lightning infusion and pierce for AoE damage. As I said, you're able to get explosive shot at level 22, which then will open up the door to detonate your grenades. Also, once you get a good crossbow that has some combination of flat physical damage, increased physical damage and flat firing damage, then you should probably go ignite. Next up we have our passive skill tree. For most new players this can seem extremely daunting, but actually it's quite simple. A character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more from completing certain quests. In extremely simple terms, at the top we have the intelligence section, which focuses on spell damage, summoning and elemental damage. Then we have the bottom right, which is dexterity section and is more focused on ranged combat, evasion and speed. And then finally we have the bottom left, the strength section, which is more melee and defense oriented. Then next we have the passive nodes, and they are split into two categories. The small passives that grant minor bonuses such as small increase to attack speed, spell damage, melee damage or attributes. And then second we have the notable passives, These are slightly larger passive points that grant greater bonuses than the smaller ones, but they have stats on them that are often closely related to the small passives leading up to them, so think of these as checkpoints to work towards. And then on top of this, we have the third passive point, but which is not entirely compared to the two others. So for the third one, we have the keystones. These are build-changing, character-defining points that often provide a massive amount of power with a downside, but these downsides can be reduced or worked towards. So we want to start at the projectile damage node, and go like this until we get these 3 notable nodes. Then next we work towards here and get these 2 more nodes. Then afterwards go like this and get that entire right side. Then now keep going down until this circle, and then we take the right and get that whole right side, starting with instant reload and all the way up till wasting. Then now we come back to this path and get that whole circle. And then from here we just keep going down and take whatever node you want, as long as you follow this path exactly in the way that you see here. To simplify my decision making, then basically we want to prioritize instant reload first, because reload speed will give us the biggest build upgrade, so we want to get it first. Then also, once you have explosive grenade and explosive shot skills, then start taking the grenade node and grenade reload speed. Then next our path down to the crossbow wheel at the bottom is made for more damage, and the leatherbound's gauntlet and the general's binding is for more defense. And then finally for the rest of our nodes, they are meant for once you go ignite, which will increase our damage and other ailments. In POE 2, earning skill points take a lot of hard work, so it will be wise not to spend your points recklessly. You can of course reset your passive points later, but only at a cost, so following a specific setup is extremely useful. Also, understanding the passive skill tree can make or break your character, so investing more time in this specific section will definitely upgrade your knowledge of the game. But overall, if you are following my setup, then make sure to not deviate from it, because some of the decisions that I make might not make sense at first, but is going to pay off later. So please use this exact same path as I have right here, and don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make this easier for you to follow this tree. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the advanced Dayat crossbow, with stats like the critical, speed and min and max physical damage. For prefixes we have a load and additional bolt, increased physical damage, add to physical damage and add to fire damage. Then for helmet we have the shielded helm, with stats like the armor and evasion. Then for chest we have the advanced explorer armor with the armor and evasion. Then for belt we have the mail belt with reduced flask charges. Then for gloves we got the bolstered mitts with armor. Then for boots we are using the stacked sabatons with the armor and evasion. Then for our first ring we got the ruby ring with fire resistance, while on the second one we got the sapphire ring with cold resistance. And then finally for the amulet we get the jade amulet with dexterity. As the game just launched, so this is a starter setup, which should be more of an example with stats and prefixes to look for. Your weapon will be the most important upgrade to look for, so prioritize flat damage of any type. Specifically, the physical roll will be the most important, as your skills themselves will do a lot of conversion. Also, once you start investing more points into the passive skill tree, then you will want to look for stats like the flat physical and flat fire damage. Attack speed is also helpful as it improves your reload speed. For defenses, make sure you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so look for increased armor on gloves to get the best use of our leather-bound gauntlet node, which gives 1 evasion per every 1 armor, and then go with armor/evasion hybrid for all the other items. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So for bossing on large rare enemies, we want to start the rotation by using the permafrost bolts, which freezes them and gives us the full bonus from the frost fire. Then afterwards, we drop explosive grenades, and either way wait for the fuse, or hit them with the detonator skill, which does not have a consume freeze support on it. And for this, in this rotation, I'm using the explosive shot. And then from here, we want to finish it off with the high velocity rounds and or galvanic shards. And then the rest of our skills are filler spells, which we can use until we get back our main DPS rotation.